wanted to start thinking about a career, not just a job. As the industry is changing, as our customer, expectations are changing, a lot of utilities, a lot of states are undergoing different, regulatory changes as well. Severe weather events that only happened once in every 20 years, but now they're happening once every 5 years now. A lot of the data center costs are being put and passed through to customer bills. What is it that you want? You want to get into the utility industry? Why do you want to get into the utility industry?
Dynamic Ratings partners with utilities to successfully implement integrated asset monitoring solutions that reduce unexpected outages, improve reliability, extend asset lifespan, and deliver measurable results. My guest is Darren Tillman. Darren, welcome. Welcome to the podcast. This is a opportunity to share knowledge, and we've known each other for some time. You're involved in the industry. I see you at the T&D World events, other industry events, and we've had a chance to talk, but not everyone is familiar with your leadership role at Baltimore Gas and Electric, an excellent company. And you have a leadership role in both electric and gas. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got in the industry and about your current role?
Yeah, afternoon, Ben. And first, I just want to say thanks for having me. It's definitely a privilege and glad to be here to have this conversation. So first, I guess I'll start off with how I got to my current role. So maybe starting how I came in the industry. So around when I was 22 years old, I actually had gotten to the point where I wanted to start thinking about a career, not just a job, but really having that career. So of course, I just discovered ComEd, which is the utility company servicing most of Northern Illinois, particularly Chicago.
Right.
So I came into the company in the Exelon family as a whole, but specifically at ComEd as a meter reader. So I started in the field. This was pre-AMI deployment as well. So walking 6 to 8 miles a day was real.
Wow. Okay.
And from there, you had the AMI deployment, which came to ComEd's territory. And then I had a few roles after that as well, such as working in the new business residential side of things, work management. And then also while at ComEd as well, for the Chicago region, I supported electric operations support. My title was a contract coordinator, but my function was more of a job owner, I would say. So I oversaw all of the contractor operations for the Chicago region of ComEd. ComEd has 4 regions: North region, West region, South region, and Chicago region, and oversaw electric distribution projects, contractor management, as well as paving and restoration. So I came in through ComEd.
No kidding.
Came in through ComEd, then took the leap, and came to Baltimore, I want to say a week before the pandemic hit, March 2020.
Timing.
And I went from that contract coordinator to senior contract coordinator at Baltimore Gas and Electric, as the Department of Contract and Project Management was being developed and expanded. So in that role, definitely an expanded role in the contract and project management organization. A few of the things I handled was primarily electric distribution, but I did handle some combo work, electric and gas distribution work.
Okay.
And this included handling RFP and bid events, typically $1 million and under. Also partnering with the project teams to just go over and develop the risk and scope of work review, ensuring a project plan was developed thoroughly. I handled the contract creation, as well as supporting the project management office and supporting that and review to ensure that we all were following the project management knowledge and skills. So from that role, lots of contract and project management, field brought me to my current role. July 2022, I came over back into customer field operations where I
Hmm.
started in the field, but now in a position of oversight. So I currently oversee, I'll give you the high level version, electric and gas, meter
Right.
maintenance, revenue protection. We also have electric and gas emergency response. So for electric, part of that is the secondary, so pole to house, as well as the meter. And then for gas, we also support as secondary gas emergency responders as well throughout the Baltimore, the BGE region. And then, we also support other things like executing regulatory work in the state of Maryland.
Okay,
So
regulatory.
Comar jobs where, Code of Maryland regulation, meter changes, and inspections as well. So
Hmm.
that's the high level version to the first question.
Yeah, well, no, that's great. And what I love about your story is it shows a path, a career path, right? People coming into the utility industry, that there are multiple paths to get to where you are in a leadership role, now both in electric and gas, overseeing a team that's deploying some of that critical infrastructure that the utility is using to assess these days not just how much energy we're using, but also more and more using it for diagnostics and what's next. And of course, that's we want to get to that. But before we go to the future, I want to ask you what are some of the challenges that you're facing now in the area of smart meter. We used to call them smart meters. What do we call them now? This meter technology that you're deploying. First of all, how long has it been out, roughly speaking? And what are some of the challenges that you're seeing now, and some of the solutions that you're finding with those challenges? If you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know, at least from a BGE perspective, I'm thinking about electric and gas. I know gas started deploying AMI technology in around 2013,
Mm-hmm.
but the electric was a little bit further back, going into the late 2000s, early
Mm-hmm.
2010s. But one of the things that I've seen, having going from AMI 1.0, which, majority of the focus is let's get these, advanced metering infrastructure, um, pieces of equipment or AMI equipment, smart meters installed at these premises. So, hey, we have the smart meters, we have the ability to see if a meter's reading by itself, or we have the ability to, check certain things. The 1.0 in this current landscape is, I would say, not enough. As the industry is changing, as our customer, expectations are changing,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the regulatory climate. A lot of utilities, a lot of states are undergoing different, regulatory changes as well. We need more. So as we're starting to pivot, and I'll of course focus more on the electric piece of the AMI
Mm-hmm.
and not the gas piece, when we start considering those challenges, a lot of it, the affordability piece of it, the sustainability part of it. And then we also, of course, we have to consider the customer. What can we do to make it simple for the customer? What are
Mm.
some, you
Keyword
know,
simple.
we can come with a lot of problems, but what solutions do we have with the problems? What can we try? What can we do? What can we explore? And as we start looking forward to other types of technology, I mean, you have, AI being implemented in various areas of the
Mm-hmm.
service. You have different forms of smart metering or intelligent technologies, like the solar or net metering, or the distributed, energy resources or DERs. And then, of course, you have AMI 2.0, which, that can be, a complicated subject for many to talk about. What does AMI 2.0 look like? You
Yeah,
have,
and I
you
want to
know,
get to that. I want to get that before we go to 2.0. I want to ask some questions about the current technology. One is, from your perspective, how long are these meters lasting from a life expectation point of view?
Right. And that's a really good question. So a lot of times we may receive this equipment and it's supposed to have a 15 to 25-year life cycle
Okay.
on average. But the more that the system is draining because of these severe weather events that only happen once in every 20 years, or now they're happening once every 5 years now.
Okay.
It's draining, and it's a lot of wear and tear on the equipment. So that piece of equipment, that smart meter that was
Hmm.
supposed to last 20 years, it may only last 8 to 10 years now. And it may not even be just the smart meter. What are the systems that we're using? What are the system applications?
Hmm.
How are the applications responding? And
Hmm.
back to the field, how are the relays responding for those areas that may need signal boosters? Just to name, a few things. So, that's if I had to say, on average, and just thinking about the industry, having done some research and some
Hmm.
case studying, that's what we're looking at and what we're up against right now.
So is your team going out and replacing some of these assets? Just what does maintenance look like on these products? Do they is it just the severe weather events that come through, maybe voltage transients or some type of scenario where the equipment gets damaged? Is that pretty much what's driving you to upgrade the equipment, or is it that of course, you can detect remotely if it's responding, right? And then probably take action on it. But tell me a little bit about that. What does that look like? What is your team required to do when you have a meter that stops responding? And another piece of that is, are there upgrades that you need to do, or can they be done remotely? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, when it comes to the meter itself,
Mm-hmm.
severe weather events, that's definitely one impact on
Mm-hmm.
the equipment. When we think about we're installing these new pieces of equipment and we have this expectant lifespan, well, that's
Mm-hmm.
not happening. We also have revenue protection. Unfortunately, we have some individuals who their bill may be too high, or they may
Mm.
not simply want to pay their bill. So now we have
Mm.
the tampering of
I
the
see.
electric meter.
Mm.
And that's another factor, especially in this current climate, which is, very unfortunate.
Mm.
But what we're really seeing, when it comes to those things, that's really having an impact. And then you touched on, let's say my team, for example. So we have, I would say, three facets when it comes to that. We have corrective maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
we have reactive maintenance, and we have proactive maintenance. So the corrective maintenance are typically those jobs where we've identified meters on the system that may not be compatible or they're not up to Code of Merriman standards. So they
Mm.
may be Comar jobs, or they may be, meters that are poor performing, which means they're more susceptible to being faulty or
I see.
to having an impact. We think about those old watt hour mechanical
Mm-hmm.
meters, for example. That's one example. So that's more corrective maintenance. Now, reactive maintenance, that's when a meter's not communicating or a meter's not registering consumption. So
Mm-hmm.
when we think about a meter that's not registering consumption, if I see from the back office perspective that this AMI meter has the same reading, let's just say 2 consecutive weeks of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the meter's reading, but it's not registering any additional consumption. But why is that? Well, reactive maintenance, we're sending a technician there
Mm-hmm.
to investigate why, and if possible, troubleshoot it. Is the home
I see.
vacant? Is the home being rehabbed? Is the
I
meter
see. Mm-hmm.
there? Is the meter faulty? And
Mm-hmm.
then we also have the other part where the meter is just not communicating. So maybe it's a lifespan thing. Maybe the meter is sunburnt because of extreme heat for a long or an extended period of
Hmm.
time. Maybe
No
there's
kidding.
tampering.
Didn't hear
Maybe
that
the
was such an
meter,
issue.
exactly.
Interesting.
Maybe the meter's broken. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's been tampered with, or maybe the meter's gone because somebody removed the meter, and now we have theft
I
of
see.
energy taking
Mm-hmm.
place. So, and then you have the proactive piece, and that's where proactively, that's where a full deployment of, let's say, an AMI 2.0, although we're not
Mm-hmm.
there yet, we would proactively, throughout our service territory, look to upgrade all of the existing meters. Some that, the life cycle may have been, sufficient, and some of
Mm-hmm.
them maybe not. But we're not at the proactive phase. So another phase of the proactive is, hey, if I'm at this apartment meter bank and I'm here to address these 2 meters that are faulty or they just need to be changed, but I see 2 other meters next to it
Mm-hmm.
that also need to be changed, that's not on, my route for that day, let me proactively, while I'm already here, address those other meters as well.
Mm. So if these meters have a 10-year life, are is and I know you speak with a lot of other utilities, but are utilities in general, are they replacing 10% of their meters every year so that by 10 years they'll all be upgraded? Or is it pretty much you're just maintaining the current technology with the same off the shelf components, maybe some slight modification, but basic functionality, trying to make sure that it stays, AMI 1.0 stays functional? And then do you anticipate at some point you'll say, all right, any new meters will be AMI 2.0? And I know you said you're not there yet, and I think it's still a up and coming. At least that's what I hear from a lot of utilities. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So in those situations, and even, some of the discussions that I know I've had with other utilities that are comparable
Mm-hmm.
to, BGE or even, Exelon
Mm-hmm.
utilities, um, the common denominator that I'm finding, or the common practice rather, is that we find these meters. What are the reasons why? So it's a few ways to go with that. Is this a situation where if it's a lifespan issue and we're not at AMI 2.0 yet,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we can take that old expired meter and we can replace an AMI 1.0 meter on there, for example, knowing that the lifespan is still has some time on it and the meter actually works. Now, if it's a different situation where it's revenue protection, tampering, same thing. You have to analyze, what was the issue?
Mm-hmm.
Does this work? And now what some utilities are doing from what I've heard is, hey, they're looking at it where these subset of meters, like that 10%, for example, we use this particular meter, but they're all failing before the lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
Or let's say those meters are sending estimated bills, which the customer is feeling the impacts. Estimated bills can typically, not all the time, but can typically be higher than actual usage. So if they see that subset, if they have a better meter, a more, quality improving meter,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, we're not going to install those meters back into those customer premises. We're going to install this meter because we trust it, because it's been tried and it is true. And then maybe even look forward to installing those meters at a 1.0 level.
I see. Well, so just want to switch up now and look towards more of the future. What are some of the challenges that you see coming down the road? I mean, the utilities have the affordability, reliability, resilience, and safety aspect of our missions. But, specifically when we think about 2.0, what are some of the from your perspective, what are some of the things that we should be looking at to achieve with 2.0? What would make your life easier? I've assumed there's folks in asset management, there's people who have maybe regulatory responsibilities, all these different responsibilities that are looking for information. But how about from your perspective when it comes to the information that you need? What are some of the challenges with current 1.0 that you would like to see 2.0 address?
Yeah, and that's another good question, Ben. So when I think about AMI 1.0, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking from the time when I was a meter reader, and
Mm-hmm.
then of course being part of the AMI deployment 1.0,
Mm-hmm.
and actually being part of 2 AMI 1.0 deployments, both the electric and the gas utility in
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Chicago as a field technician. And then fast forwarding to 2026, I really would like them to include a few things. We have the real time energy monitoring to an extent now,
Hmm.
and I think about 1.0 typically may use like I would say batch processing, but AMI 2.0 could potentially give real time current broken down data, especially for the customers. How much energy am I using? Not
Hmm.
just for the day or for the time frame, but in the living room in my home, in the basement of my home. Are there appliances that may be driving my,
Mm.
consumption? For example, um, I even
That's an
think
interesting
about.
point. I've
Mhm.
heard that there are certain signatures of certain appliances that people can say, "Hey, we know when your wash machine's running because it looks like this kind of profile," or your air conditioner or whatever it is. They have different profiles just from the consumption and maybe some other features of voltage and current measurement that they're able to identify. And that would be fascinating. So you're saying for your customers, they want to know more, and you would like to be able to deliver them more information so that they understand the value that they're getting. Is that what you're thinking about, or?
Absolutely, and even to take it a step further, as we alluded to earlier, the industry is changing,
Hmm.
and the customers are in the center of that, particularly with affordability.
Mm.
If a customer is able to see until we can get the energy crisis, under wraps, so to speak, as
Mm.
best we can,
Right.
um, customers need to be aware. They need to have that knowledge of not just I'm using energy in time frames, but where am I using the
Mm.
most energy? What are my opportunities as a customer to maybe cut back if I can,
Right.
when it comes to those kind of things, just to
Yeah,
name, a couple.
that's an excellent point. I can speak from personal experience. This winter, we added a resistive heat to keep something from freezing outdoors, and was surprised at the end of the month. I could have, I've got electrical background. I could have calculated the amount of power, but I was surprised. Like, whoa! Now, had I known that, I may have made a different choice about how I use that. And I think you bring a good point. If we can give the customer more information and be proactive on that, not just surprise at the end of the month, that probably would be good. I know that our insurance company just recently insisted that we install a little monitor in our home to detect, and the thing's reporting to me now. I have an app on my phone saying, this is what the voltage is, plus and minus, the top and bottom levels of voltage, and this is what it levels it should be. I'm thinking, this is my insurance company telling me. Should the utility be telling me this information? So as a customer, I'm thinking, well, wouldn't it be great if the trusted resource of the utility is the one telling me this information, not some little who knows off the shelf component insisted that to be installed for fire protection in my home. And I wonder now, is are people going to start pushing back and say, hey, I've got this information that I've got poor voltage quality or something in my home, and you know, it, how do we get ahead of that, right? I mean, is it going to be your team running out there and saying, yeah, we'll upgrade your meter reactively instead of proactively, right?
Right. Exactly. And that's one of those things too, of course, operational efficiency is key. We
Mm-hmm.
have to be efficient in our operations, especially you think about a cost perspective, the capital versus the O&M. And, you have the capital aspect when you're installing a new asset, whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
new meter, a new pole, a new service, or even exchanging it, like for like. But
Mm-hmm.
then you have the O&M aspect where we're repeatedly having those truck rolls,
Mm-hmm.
technicians going back, inspecting the meter, but not really diagnosing it. Does it need to be changed? I just need to perform a visual inspection? Is it
Mm-hmm.
depth of energy? There's a couple of layers with that from an operational and a business perspective. But again, the customers have to be at the forefront. You and I are customers. You
We
and I
are.
are customers as well. So that's something that, I know I would appreciate, and even, just, thinking of electrification efforts and the net metering and things like that. Can AMI 2.0, I would say, detect, EV charging on customer premises that may allow different utilities to engage with the users real time when it comes
Mm.
to charging patterns
Hmm.
as well. And that's just one thing. And I know the Salt River project as well. I did some reading on that. And if I'm not mistaken, the Salt River project had all of their customer base, I think around 1 million customers, utilize some kind of an app, some kind of Wi-Fi smart meters for real time tracking, monitoring, even
Mm.
having certain thresholds that could
Okay.
be set. And then, if I'm not mistaken, they also had some kind of prepayment option or something. I read about this a little while ago. It just popped
Wow.
into my mind, but just thinking of a real
Yeah.
time example out in the Arizona area. So,
Well, I have one last question about AMI 2.0 and your perspective on it.
mhm.
The AMI 2.0 that we're thinking about will, as compared to 1.0, does 1.0 have the ability to upgrade the software remotely? Maybe not just yours, but are
Yeah.
you aware of, is that possible
Right.
today, or
Yeah.
does
So,
it?
AMI, what I would say to that is it depends on certain systems and
Hmm.
certain applications. So
Hmm.
there may be some vendors who may enable that feature. Hey, this is 1.0. If we do a few, firmware upgrades,
Hmm.
things like that, we can convert our system to 2.0 to enable, the 1.0 meter to have that functionality.
I
In
see.
some cases, and we've kind of seen that a little bit on our gas side,
Hmm.
but focusing more on the electric part of it. Um, it really just depends, but I think the focus is really upgrading the meters as a whole
Hmm.
and seeing what can we take from that versus having an entire, software application. Because again, even with them, there is, a cost aspect. So some of it
As soon as you have to roll a truck, that's a
is
big
it
expense.
worth it? Yeah, it's, and some companies have to ask, will it
Hmm.
be worth it? Will this risk be
Right.
worth it? Or this projection versus having an entirely new piece of equipment with a newer upgraded version of the system.
Right. So, just would you say that the current technology is generally not upgraded remotely? It's mostly someone has to roll a truck and install it. Would you say that
Yes,
most meters
for
that way?
it's
Okay.
specifically for the physical asset. Yes,
Hmm. Yeah.
you
Okay.
have to roll a truck for that.
Well, I think you and I could talk about this for a long time. I have so many more questions, but time is moving on, and I just want to make sure. I would like to ask you a couple quick questions, quick lightning round of questions related to your view of current technology. What's something in the past year that you've learned about the industry, or just in the last time that you'd like to share with the industry? Some idea that you've had or that you've heard that you'd like to share.
Yeah. So first, this last year, I've really had a chance to really sit back and do a little more research.
Mm-hmm.
So not just, in the mid-Atlantic or in the Exelon utility, regulatory spaces, but really nationwide and even a little bit global, seeing what Luma Energy is
Mm-hmm.
doing down there in Puerto Rico
I was
to,
just down there visiting with
upgrade
them.
their
Yeah.
infrastructure and, even over in Europe. But I've really had a chance to just sit back and just be a sponge, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
trying to absorb as much knowledge as I
Right.
can. And, the one thing that I see right now, of course, the data centers, they've been out there,
Right.
but I've continued to see and learn just how much, water and energy data centers can have. And
Mm-hmm.
I will say data centers may get, a bad rap, especially with the customers, because a lot of the data center costs are being put and passed through to customer bills. And that's a whole different conversation and a much longer conversation.
Yeah.
I
At least
think
there's the
we all can
perception of
have.
that. I think in
Right.
many cases there is, pay to play for the data centers, but there's a fear of that anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? What I would say is I really would like for the energy industry
Mm-hmm.
to be more agile, and that's just my perspective.
Mm,
Overall, I think it's a little bit rigid. You
mm,
know, resistant to change or does not change well, not flexible. You
mm-hmm.
know, and especially in this current day and age, we have to be agile. We have to be able to adapt, bend a little,
Right.
compromise, see what works, what doesn't work, and ultimately find somewhere to meet in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, operational excellence, efficiency, of course, safety, but also customer affordability. It has to be at the center of that, and we have to come up with those solutions and ultimately work together. That's the
Yep.
utility working together, working with the regulatory commissions in the state, working with the federal, different federal companies. Like you have the FERCs, you have the
Mm-hmm.
Edison Electric Institute, you have EPRI. Um, benchmark, share best practices, and
Mm-hmm.
what can we do? What can we do um, to come up
Well,
with the best solutions?
right. And that's, again, appreciate you coming on the podcast to share your experience because you really do have a great purview of the industry. Another quick question for you. If someone would like to get into the industry, what I love about your story is it's it shows that there are many paths. But what tip would you give if somebody's interested in getting into the electric industry? What would you suggest they do? So, say you have a young person in high school or maybe college, and they're interested in getting involved in the energy industry. What tip would you give them?
I will say first and foremost, be deliberate. And when I say be deliberate, what is it that you want? You want to get into the utility industry. Why do you want to
Mm-hmm.
get into the utility industry? Okay, and why? Okay, how? So how can you do that? And that's a lot of times where, some people they may stumble a bit, which is fine. But there are plenty of energy experts around us or subject matter experts where, hey, whether it's LinkedIn or whether it's in passing,
Mm-hmm.
here in Maryland, our workforce development team, I would say is second to none. Under that Exelon umbrella, we're out at the high schools talking to these sophomores, these juniors, these seniors.
Getting
Just
out
to
there early.
name
That's great
one
to
thing
hear.
exactly, we're hosting Youth Energy Day events where we had demonstrations,
Mm-hmm.
line workers, field supervisors and managers, and others having those conversations about the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And also just making sure, hey, really understand why you want to do it. Understand that if you come here, it's not just about the money. It's a
Mm-hmm.
career.
Right.
It
Right.
is a career.
Well, it's an
And just
opportunity
having
to
that
really make a
purview.
difference in an industry that's so essential. And I love
That
your idea of finding the mentors and also looking for those opportunities that you're not the only utility that said that they're doing that. They're out reaching out, but it's a two-way street, right? Maybe there's an event that the utility is and at the school, it's an opportunity to go visit them and talk to them and not be afraid to ask questions, right? I love that. So really, we need to wrap, but before we do, just want to make sure, are there any other thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience before we conclude?
Yeah, I would just say, just continue for everyone, continue being intentional about finding solutions to help the utilities, to partner
Mm-hmm.
with and share best practices with other utilities, with our regulatory commissions,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately controlling what we can control. And that's how we show up, the examples we set, leading by example.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, too, when we think about that, always think about the customer when we're thinking about the business decisions that we're making. Don't just think now short term, think long term, big picture, as that can have
Mm.
ramifications for years to come.
I love that. So customer centric, total life cycle analysis, and making sure we maintain good communication with all parties. Well, that's a fantastic way to wrap this session. Darren Tillman, it's been a pleasure getting to not only learn more about your world inside those high tech meters that you're dealing with and some of the challenges you're facing, but also what we're going to be looking at for the future. So thanks for coming by and sharing your knowledge.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me, Ben. Looking forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, we'll see you soon.